Yes, Simon, I remembered you. Good afternoon, everyone, and most welcome to this session on the PrEPVacc trial. This is a vaccine literacy session. I guess it's the end of this 2020 strange year, so it's great that we're able to meet maybe one last or second from last time before we close out this year. So today we're really super pleased to be able to learn more about the PrEPVacc trial. As the name suggests, it's a vaccine trial as well as a PrEP trial, and it's testing not one but two PrEP agents, of which we'll hear a little bit more from Vincent Basaja as well as Nitha. Vincent is in Masaka in Uganda, and Nitha is in South Africa. So I think I'm going to try and project the program just to go over it briefly, the agenda. I hope I can project it. Yeah. So share screen, desktop. Gosh, I hope you can see it. Yeah. Oh, it has all the track changes. Sorry. Yeah, so this is the agenda. We are going to have some opening remarks. I'm hoping that Manju is on the call, but if not, I think I'm going to enlist Mitchell, who can take us through some introductions, maybe tell us a little bit about the Fellows Program, as well as the CASPR program, and then I will take over and introduce Nandi. Nandi will take us through just a quick intro to HIV vaccines, why we need a vaccine, and the vaccine pipeline, including some of the happenings that have happened this year. We'll hear a bit more from Nandi. And then we will then launch into discussing the PrEPVacc trial. And we are very lucky to have Vincent, who is like a senior community engagement staff of PrEPVacc, as well as Nitha, who is a senior medical as well as community engagement staff of PrEPVacc based in South Africa. After that, Angelo and I will spend about 20 minutes. We've left 20 minutes deliberately so that we have a good, robust discussion. And then I hope we can unpack some of the advocacy issues and so on in terms of vaccine research, and especially for the PrEPVacc trial. And then we are hoping to close off with Stacey giving us some closing remarks, as well as a way forward, how we can continue to engage with this trial, as well as the vaccine research in general. Yeah, so I will turn it over to, let me see if Manju is on the call, or if not.
She's not able to join.
Okay, so Mitchell, I'm sorry to recruit you on short notice. I hope you're able to do it. Otherwise, we will do the introductions.
I'm going to first check with Vincent to see if this, and Kathy Slack is on the line, to see if this is suitable informed consent to be recruited into this role. But it is absolutely my pleasure. I'm not going to take anybody's time, because many of you know each other, and we have a lot of exciting things to talk about. But I just am so excited to see everybody here. Just to say that this number of you are well known to each other as alumni of the Advocacy Fellows Program, some of you back now 11 years. And there's a whole constellation of you, and it is great to see that in full force. In addition, a number of you are involved in the Coalition to Accelerate and Support Prevention Research, CASPR, which is a big project that we are honored to collaborate with a number of partners on the line over a 10-year period to accelerate and support prevention research. And for those on the line from IAVI, I think you know it well, both as a partner to CASPR, but also as the sibling project to advance the R&D program funded by USAID that IAVI leads. And the great news is some of you wear multiple hats, who have been both fellows and are part of CASPR. And just so nice to see everybody here. I think it's important to get to the pipeline and to PrEPVacc. So maybe, Daisy, not to shirk my responsibility, but if that's okay, I'm happy to turn it back to you and to Nandi.
Thank you so much, Mitchell, for that. And I think without further ado, I am going to start projecting Nandi's slides so that we can go through the slides and then enter the very exciting discussion session. So I'm gonna, let me just see how I can share the screen. Right, desktop. Oops, share. Right. Okay, Nandi, I'm going to go like that, and I can go ahead and move the slides as on your cue.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Daisy. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to try to rush in the 10 minutes that I have to give you just a brief introduction on HIV vaccines and then talk a bit about the HIV pipeline. Next slide, please, Daisy. Okay, so what is a vaccine? Yeah, so a vaccine is a substance introduced in the body to teach the body to produce an immune system against viruses, bacteria, or other harmful germs. This immune response allows the body to prevent or control infection if exposed to the germs later. So it's given to a person to protect them against a specific infection or to prevent that infection from causing disease in the future. A vaccine can be preventive, therapeutic, or both. And preventive HIV vaccines for HIV-negative populations have been developed to control the spread of HIV. And similarly, researchers are also evaluating therapeutic vaccines to treat people who are already living with HIV or are HIV positive. HIV vaccines do not contain HIV and cannot cause HIV infection because they do not contain any whole, live, weakened, or killed HIV. Most licensed vaccines against other diseases are very safe when manufactured and used properly, and they're about 70 to about 99% effective. Currently, there's no effective vaccine. There's no effective HIV vaccine available today. Next slide, please, Daisy. Thank you. So how do vaccines work? Vaccines work by teaching the body to recognize the infection and help the body's immune system to prepare to fight back against it. So a vaccine stimulates the body's immune system to recognize and protect against an infection or creates resistance to an infection. It's like giving your body lots of soldiers that are trained to fight a certain enemy, which is the virus. So by giving you a product that appears to the body as the virus, the immune system creates antibodies and immune cells. So the immune system will be already prepared to fight the real virus if a person is exposed to the real HIV as depicted in the picture. Vaccines have eliminated diseases such as smallpox and greatly reduced the spread of other diseases like polio, protecting the health of our communities. Next slide, please, Dave. So can an HIV vaccine cause one to get infected with HIV? Well, one thing that's really important to remember about HIV vaccines is that they are made differently from most common vaccines. HIV vaccines do not contain any of the actual HIV. The vaccines only contain pieces of the virus that are made in the laboratory. The pieces are used to teach your body to recognize the virus without showing your body the virus itself. For example, if you take a tire or a steering wheel, you will probably think, so if you see a tire or a steering wheel, you'll probably think of a car, but you cannot drive with just those two parts. Or if you took a mobile phone or your cell phone, you took it apart and just had the SIM card, you could not use that SIM card to make a call or to send a text. So HIV vaccines are being tested, are made synthetically, or they're man-made, in the lab using pieces of HIV that have been copied. So there's absolutely no way that vaccines can cause an HIV infection. Many different parts of the HIV virus are currently being explored to form a vaccine, including some of the key proteins that make up the envelope of the virus, some DNA fragments, and many, many more. Next slide, please. So this slide is showing the typical vaccine trial process. So typically vaccine development requires several years of research in labs and animals. So this stage is where the products are being tested at the lab and in animals is known as the preclinical stage. And this is before clinical testing is done in humans. Developing a safe and effective vaccine is a long process, and HIV is an especially difficult target because the virus is constantly changing and evolving. A potential vaccine typically goes through 3 phases of testing in humans before licensing for public use could be considered. So there's phase 1, which usually involves a small number of healthy individuals or volunteers that are usually HIV negative and at low risk of HIV infection. And this phase is done to test the tolerability as well as safety of the vaccine. And it usually takes or lasts about 12 to 18 months. Vaccines then progress to phase 2 trials, which typically involve hundreds of volunteers that are HIV negative, both at low risk and sometimes at high risk of HIV. And this phase is usually done to test again safety, the immune responses to the vaccine, as well as various doses of the vaccine. And this phase usually lasts up to about 2 years. There's another phase called phase 3, which involves thousands and thousands of volunteers, again, HIV negative and at risk of HIV infection. And again, safety, you will notice, is one of the things that is tested throughout the different phases of a clinical trial. So they are testing safety as well as efficacy or effectiveness of the vaccine. And this stage can last about 3 to 4 years. However, with the plight of COVID-19 or the COVID-19 pandemic, this traditional approach to vaccine testing is being challenged, and we are seeing vaccines against COVID-19 being developed at pandemic speeds, using a number of innovative strategies to shorten the vaccine testing and distribution timeline. We are hoping that although this is not an approach that is, or these approaches are not widely used in HIV research, we are hoping that the COVID world is going to teach us or teach scientists and the rest of us a lot so that we can perhaps adapt some of these strategies so that we can fast track the development of HIV vaccines. Next slide, please. So this slide is depicting how long it takes scientists to get vaccines for other diseases. So you will notice in the slide that it took researchers about 93 years to find a vaccine against influenza B. And it's been over 90 years, and researchers still haven't found a vaccine against herpes. The last row, which is highlighted in red, shows the journey towards a vaccine against HIV. And as you can see, it's been over 35 years, and researchers in partnerships with communities and various other groups and stakeholders are working tirelessly, testing several potential vaccines to prevent HIV infection throughout the world, with hopes of one day finding a safe and effective vaccine against HIV. Next slide, please. So how can an HIV vaccine help an individual? Well, there are several reasons why a vaccine could be very helpful. One way that a vaccine could work is by preventing a person from becoming infected, so preventing infection, and this would be the best outcome. Another way that a vaccine could work would be to slow down the HIV in a person's body if they did become infected. And this means that they would stay healthier longer. Next slide, please. And how could an HIV vaccine help a community? Another way then is would be to slow the amount of HIV transmission in the entire community. So if lots of people got vaccinated, it would mean that they would be protected from HIV. And if they were protected, it means they would not be able, or they would not be passing HIV to their partners. And in this way, an HIV vaccine would help the community by preventing new infections as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide shows the 4 big trials that are currently in clinical, or the 4 studies of the 4 big trials, I suppose, that are currently in clinical trials in 2020. So as you can see, we have the Ohambo study, also known as HV10702. We also have the Imbogoto study and the Mosaico study, which are studies done by the HV10 in partnership with Janssen, as well as the PrEPVacc study, which is the reason why we're all here today. And we're going to learn a bit more about that later. Next slide, please. So I'll start with the Ohambo study. So the Ohambo study is a research study that was conducted, or that is conducted rather, by the HV10 to test a combination of 2 experimental vaccines to see if they could protect against HIV infection, amongst other questions. The study vaccines used in this trial are called the PrEPVacc vaccine, as well as the GP 120 M59 or protein vaccine. And the vaccines used in the study were based on a vaccine regimen that was used in the RV144 study that was conducted in Thailand, which was the first study to ever show that a vaccine could have the potential to protect one against HIV infection. The study enrolled men and women in South Africa at 14 clinical research sites. However, in January 2020, the DSMB, or the Data Safety and Monitoring Board, reviewed data from this particular study and concluded that the experimental vaccines used in the study did not prevent HIV infection, and that there was no evidence that these vaccines could have any level of protection against HIV in the future. And the study was subsequently stopped by the HV10 for futility. Next slide, please. The next slide is the Imbogoto study. So this study is a test of concept or proof of concept study, and it's being done to see if the AD26 Mosaic vaccine together with the GP140 vaccine or protein vaccine can work in women in sub-Saharan Africa to prevent HIV infection. The vaccines are not for licensure. The study has enrolled 2,600 women between the ages of 18 to 35 in 5 African countries. And participants will get or are getting a total of 4 injections. They'll get the AD26 Mosaic vaccine in month 0 and month 3, and then a combination of the AD26 Mosaic vaccine and the protein vaccine in months 6 and 12. There's also another arm, which is a placebo arm, and the people enroll that were randomized into that group are also getting similar. They're also on a similar vaccine schedule. The Imbogoto study differs from the HV10702 study that I just spoke about in several ways. Firstly, the 702 trial was conducted, or not really, it wasn't conducted in South Africa and enrolled both men and women, whereas the Imbogoto study is only enrolling women. Another distinction between the 2 trials is that the HV10702 trial was only using vaccines that were only going to work for the subtype C strain, which is the type of strain that is predominant or dominant in the in Southern Africa. So this trial, if those vaccines were found efficacious, they would not necessarily work for other parts of the body. For other parts in the world or other areas where the subtype C strain was not common. Another huge difference is that the Mosaic vaccine have the vaccines used in the 706 or Imbogoto's trial have Mosaic inserts. So this is the idea that the inserts or the amino acids that are inserted in this AD26 vaccine will reflect the most common features of HIV that your body might be exposed to in a natural infection. So the thought is that this would teach your body how to better recognize various viruses if you're ever exposed. So the mosaic piece of it has different inserts of the different strains of HIV that are circulating in the world, meaning that this particular vaccine, if found effective or efficacious, may be able to protect one from different types of HIV that are circulating globally. And the study is currently ongoing. Thank you. So this slide is a slide that is showing the Mosaico study. So the Mosaico study is a phase 3 study. It's a complementary study or sister study to the Imbogoto study, again done by the HVTN as well as Janssen. And it's evaluating investigational vaccines, again, based on this mosaic idea. So which is, again, a vaccine that is comprising of elements of multiple HIV subtypes, so multiple HIV strains that aim to induce immune responses against a wide variety of global HIV strains. So different HIV subtypes or clades that are circulating or dominant around the globe have been inserted in both the Mosaico vaccines as well as the vaccines used in the Imbogoto study. And the aim is that, or the hope, or what scientists are hoping is that these vaccines will protect us, right? Seeing that they are done in different populations from various strains of HIV that are circulating in the world. The Clade C HIV strain is common in Southern Africa, where the Imbogoto study is being conducted, while the Clade B is predominant in regions of Europe and the Americas, where the Mosaico trial is being done. The Mosaico trial, one of the biggest differences between the Imbogoto and Mosaico trial is the population, or are the populations enrolled in the trial. So the Imbogoto trial is enrolling women, whereas the Mosaico trial is enrolling MSM as well as transgender populations, as well as the geographies, so the areas where this trial is being conducted, or the trials are being conducted. The Mosaico trial is looking to enroll 3,800 volunteers between the ages of 18 to 60. And it's also currently ongoing. Next slide, please. This now brings us to the PrEPVacc trial, which is the reason why, again, we are all here. So I'm going to end there and hand it over to my wonderful colleagues, Vincent and Nitha, who are going to tell us a bit more about this amazing trial known as PrEPVacc. Over to you, Vincent and Nitha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nandi. That was a great overview of the trials. We tend to forget how much is going on, with COVID and everything. So I think without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Vincent and Nitha to tell us more about the PrEPVacc trial. I'm going to project the slides, and please tell me how to sort of drive them, Nitha and Vincent. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Daisy, and thanks, Nandi. You've made our work a lot easier by giving that wonderful background to HIV vaccine clinical trials. So this is going to provide an overview of the PrEPVacc study, and it's going to be shared between me and my sister, Nitha. So next slide, please. So that's Vincent and Nitha, and Vincent is the Community Liaisons Officer at the MRSC, the VRI and London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine Uganda Research Unit, and Nitha, my sister, is a Senior Research Manager at the South African Medical Research Council. Next, please. Next. So the overview will cover why we need a vaccine, Okay, that's fine. I don't think I need to go through this slide anymore because I think most of it has been covered by Nandi. So only to say that the vaccine teaches the body immune system to prevent a particular infection or fight a disease, or to keep people healthy if they are attacked by that pathogen, in our case, HIV. So currently, the world does not have a licensed vaccine to prevent HIV. And in order to develop an HIV vaccine, researchers need to test it among people to find out if it might help prevent or fight HIV, and also to find out if it is safe and good enough. So the PrEPVacc trial will either rule out or encourage further development of two different combination vaccine regimens for preventing HIV. Both these regimens have already been tested in clinical trials and have demonstrated very good safety profile. Next, please. So the PrEPVacc trial is, as the name connotes, it has both PrEP and HIV vaccines, and that's why it's the PrEPVacc trial. It's a phase 2B, 3-arm, 2-stage HIV prophylactic vaccine trial with the second randomization to compare Truvada, that's Staph, and Descovy, that's Staph, and then Truvada as pre-exposure prophylaxis. PrEP is led by African researchers from Entebbe, Uganda, at the MRC VRI, and they are supported by 14 partners, 6 from Africa, 6 from Europe, and 2 from the US. And down are our partners, so I don't have to go through all of them. The idea is to bring products together, populations and know-how together around the ambitious goal of delivering a prophylactic HIV vaccine with European funding. Next, please. So the study objectives are to assess the safety and efficacy of two HIV-1 prophylactic vaccine regimens, each compared to placebo in reducing HIV incidence, and also to test whether a new form of oral PrEP, which is Descovy, taken daily is equivalent or more effective than Truvada taken daily in averting HIV infection in the context of the current PrEP availability situation at the study sites. The PrEP results from this PrEPVacc trial will be very valuable in informing future implementation and uptake strategies at local and other settings where PrEP uptake is low, even when access is low but likely to be more widely available in future. Next, please. So the study is designed to detect an efficacy of public health relevance. That's why the trial is being conducted. And this is in light of the 86% reduction in HIV infections demonstrated in PrEP trials. So PrEPVacc is powered to detect a protective vaccine efficacy of 70%. And we also anticipate that an HIV vaccine program would provide PrEP to support the period to peak immunogenicity. So previous studies have demonstrated that between when someone is vaccinated and when the body enlists enough immune response, there could be some time lag. So under this PrEP, under the PrEPVacc trial, we think that PrEP will provide this support to enable bodies get to their peak of immunogenicity. And we also think we are going to use this opportunity to generate data on Descovy in predominantly female populations in sub-Saharan Africa. As I will later explain, Descovy was mostly tested among men and has not been tested among women, among populations that are predominantly female. Next, please, Daisy. So these are the countries. So the trial is planned to run at 5 sites in 4 countries. The first site is Masaka, Uganda, Mbeya in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, Maputo in Mozambique, and Durban in South Africa. Next, please. So the study is planned, the study targeted population would be a minimum of 1,668 men and women, aged between 18 and 40 years, and comprising of people from the general and key populations who report behaviors that put them at increased risk of catching HIV. These may include, but are not, these may include female bar workers, people living and working around main highways, commercial sex workers, fisher folk, and men who have sex with men. Next, please. So as I earlier said, if someone is assessed and found to be at high risk of HIV infection, they will have to meet the following inclusion criteria to be enrolled into the study. One must be HIV uninfected adult, aged between 18 and 40 years, on the day of screening. That person must be willing and able to provide informed consent prior to participation, willing and able to comply with the visit schedules and provide blood, urine, and other samples at the required time points. They must be willing to provide home addresses accessible for visiting and intending to remain within the recruitment area for at least 82 weeks from screening. And then they should be likely, they should demonstrate a likelihood of being at risk of HIV during the follow-up period. They must be willing to undergo HIV testing, receive HIV test results, and the risk reduction counseling, which include promotion of PrEP and condoms. If female of childbearing age are not sterilized, they must be willing to use a highly effective method of contraception from screening until 18 weeks after the last injection. And last but not least, if male are not sterilized, they must be willing to avoid impregnating female partners from screening until 18 weeks after the last injection. Next, please. So the exclusion criteria include the following. If one is HIV infected or has indeterminate HIV results at screening or enrollment. If one has tests hepatitis B positive, if female, if that person is currently pregnant or expecting to get pregnant, or if she is breastfeeding, if someone is participating in another biomedical research study, or in a receipt of a live vaccine within 30 days prior to randomization, that would be an exclusion as well. Participation in the previous vaccine or HIV immunotherapy trial will be an exclusion as well. If that person has received blood products or immunoglobulins within 12 weeks of screening, if they are hypersensitive, if they know they are hypersensitive to any component of the vaccine formulation used in this trial, or if they have a history of severe multiple allergies to vaccines or drugs. And then presence of systemic disease at the time of randomization or history of chronic illness that in the opinion of the investigator may compromise the participant's safety. That will also be an exclusion criterion. And any other abnormality in routine laboratory parameters as mentioned herein. Next, please. So what are the products that will be tested in the PrEPVacc trial? We have two vaccine combinations, which are, and I'm happy that Nandi tried to explain this. One will be a DNA and a protein-based vaccine, which is abbreviated as DNA plus DNA-HIV-PT123, then PrEPVacc. Then the second one will be the DNA and MVA protein-based vaccine. And then, as the Nand earlier explained, the DNA protein vaccine and MVA contain pieces of man-made HIV DNA, which tell the body to make small amounts of proteins that look like those found in HIV. The AIDS vaccine and the CN54GP140 vaccine are made of man-made proteins, which are similar to proteins from an outer surface of HIV. And these will help the body to notice and respond to these proteins. They are combined with the substances known as adjuvants. But so these vaccines have something that will mimic HIV, but also help the body to make an alarm and make antibodies against HIV. That's how I can explain this. Next, please. So this slide is trying to show how the different groups and the vaccination schedules. In group A, volunteers in that group will have the DNA and the protein vaccine all throughout, and that will be done at week 0, week 4, week 24, and week 48. Week 48 will be the booster dose. And then for the vaccine group B, they will receive the DNA protein vaccine week 0, the same vaccine to week 4, and then they will shift to the MVA at week 24, and then the booster dose at week 48. And then the third group will be the placebo control group, which will receive a placebo. In our case, it's going to be a salt water solution. Next, please. So what do we know about the vaccines that we are testing in this trial? Generally, with regard to safety, they have demonstrated to be well tolerated, as reactions in previous studies have been mild or moderate. But what we don't know yet is, we don't know yet if they are safe in pregnancy. So some, in as far as the eliciting immune responses is concerned, what we've seen with these products is that some individuals respond after the second injection, but most after the third one. And that's the reason why we think PrEP will play a very vital role to allow and bridge that gap between the first, second, and the third vaccination. We've also observed that there were responses, the immune responses drop off with time, which is why the boost is needed at week 48. And responses may make a standard HIV test look positive. That is the vaccine-induced seropositivity. So that has also been observed among people who have received these candidate vaccines. Next, please. So what do we know about the PrEP that we are going to have in this PrEPVacc trial? So PrEP effectiveness, we know that Truvada is highly effective in all populations, including pregnant women. And we also know that Descovy is highly effective in men, but has not been tested among women and has been given to very few pregnant women so far. So PrEP, what do we know about PrEP safety? Truvada is extensively used for treatment of HIV in combination, antiretroviral therapy, and now extensively used for prevention. And it has demonstrated good safety profiles, including among pregnant women. However, Descovy is widely used for treatment for HIV in combination antiretroviral therapy, but less commonly used for prevention and has less tenofovir. So we should have lower toxicity with Descovy. But that's what we know about the PrEP products, both Truvada and Descovy, that are going to be in this clinical trial. Next, please. So this slide sort of summarizes the trial design. In the vaccine group A, the volunteers will receive the vaccines under group A, under class A, that's group A, and they will be randomized either to receive Descovy or Truvada. So it's going to be the vaccine regimen plus Descovy or Truvada, depending on the PrEP randomization. And then the vaccine B group will receive that vaccine in group B, and also some volunteers in that group will receive Descovy, and others will receive Truvada. And then the placebo group will receive placebo throughout, and then they will also be randomized to receive Descovy or Truvada. So on the vaccine side of the trial, there will be randomization and placebo control. It will be randomized and placebo controlled. But on the PrEP side of the trial, it will be randomized and open label, because the tablets look different and everyone will know which type of tablet they will be receiving. So next, please. So what is the standard of care that we have, the trial has planned to have in place for trial volunteers? The trial will offer comprehensive condom and lubricant programming. We shall also have behavioral interventions, have HIV testing and counseling and risk reduction. We have HIV treatment and care in the event that one tests positive at screening or seroconverts during the trial. We also have research-tailored general health care, for example, general health care for common ailments in the study areas. We shall also provide sexual and reproductive health interventions. As earlier mentioned, we shall have PrEP. We shall also have essential strategies for an enabling environment for people to participate in this trial. We shall have a mechanism to address stigma and discrimination. We shall also do whatever is within our means to empower the community to support study volunteers. And in cases where there are issues to do with violence against people from key populations, like men who have sex with men in some circumstances, we shall try as much as possible to provide the necessary counseling and support. Next, please. So that sort of summarizes the study and how the groups will be. So group A, as I earlier mentioned, I don't have to repeat this, then that will be group B, and then the placebo, the same thing. And the timelines are, so you can see at week 0. So we have week 0, week 4, week 24, and then week 28. And so PrEP will be provided up to week 26. Then after that, participants will be referred to access PrEP from alternative sources after we have established referral networks. And there will be blood, sorry, it's okay. So down, you can see that there will be blood for safety and HIV testing before, at week 6, before the screening, week 0, and all those subsequent weeks. And every after 12 weeks during the long-term follow-up. Next, please. So people around our sites, those pictures show you the different categories of people around our sites. Next, please. So that's the type of work that people are involved in. Some are involved in fish selling, selling matoke, bartenders, commercial sex workers, and other groups of people. Next, please. That was meant to show the mode of the major modes of transport in our communities. We have in Uganda we have, and Tanzania we have borders, the motorbikes transport. We have matatus in Tanzania and Uganda and South Africa. We have trains, and then we also have long route truck drivers. We also have people who foot. Next, Daisy, please. Socializing, we have a wide range of activities. You can see people playing soccer, others watching a video, others in a bar, enjoying themselves. Oh, so there's also boda in Kenya. Thank you. Thank you, Daisy. So next, please. Next. So what are the trial? Let's go back to the previous slide, please. So what are the projected timelines? So My sister Neta will share with you a few details about the registration cohort, which started in the first quarter of 2018, and this is ongoing. The first participant is expected for the trial is expected to be enrolled in this fourth quarter of 2020, and the trial we hope that the last participants will be attending their last vaccination visits the third quarter of 2022, and then the trial will be done by 2023. So you can see the red arrows: registration cohort enrollment, and immunization and follow-up for the trial. So the endpoint for PrEP analysis will be will be earlier than the endpoint for the vaccine analysis, because PrEP will end at week 26. Next, please. So in summary, we have 3 trials in one, as you might have seen. So we are testing the regimen of 2 vaccine combinations and then PrEP as well, which is an efficient and cost-effective way of conducting trials. The targets are that we target vaccine efficacy of public health relevance, and we will test each of the 2 combination regimen compared to placebo. This trial uses a pragmatic approach to HIV vaccine trials in the era of PrEP, and PrEP provided to support the immunization phase is very important, as I earlier mentioned. We utilized the opportunity for a second round randomization to assess discovery in heterosexual populations, because discovery has not been tested among women, apart from a few women. And the results from this trial will be relevant to programmatic rollout of both PrEP, including Truvada and discovery. And if the vaccines demonstrate good levels of efficacy, to also provide relevant programmatic rollout results. So the registration code is key to achieving target incidence and timer accrual. So that's the reason why we did the registration code, as my sister Neta will share with you. So basically that's what it is about the PrEPVacc trial. I will now hand over to my sister Neta to take you through the registration code and then community engagement that we've planned and done for this trial, and she will sum it up. Thank you very much for your attention.
So hello to everyone, and thank you, Vincent, for that. Thank you to PrEPVacc for the invitation, and congratulations to PrEPVacc for the 25 years of working as an advocate. So for the interest of time, I'm going to ask Daisy to move to slide 37. The information on these slides actually are there for the fellows to have more data so that you can ask questions. So I want to make a couple points. The one is that for the purpose of the registration cohort, we're really trying to understand the community. And in terms of a good participatory practice, it's critical that we do things like formative research. The consortium in PrEPVacc has considered this registration cohort study so that we have an understanding of the HIV prevalence, what is their knowledge, and what is their understanding of issues around vaccines. And very, very important, not just for HIV, but also for COVID. The second point I want to make is that it's really, really important as advocates and as fellows that we begin to question and dialogue with the researchers around what does this efficacy mean. Nandi pointed out in the beginning of the slide that efficacy for HIV vaccines is 70 to 99%, and actually she used the term effectiveness, whereas in PrEPVacc we use the term efficacy, which is 70%. So as advocates and community members, what does this mean for communities? What does this mean for participants? And how do they understand this if we're going to roll out these products and these interventions? And it's an area that we really need to look at in terms of the ethics of these studies and in terms of cost and feasibility. So our community engagement is really exploring these issues, and I'm going to ask Daisy to move along so that we can at least hear from the advocates and the people around the group. Community engagement will be very important in PrEPVacc. The sponsors actually funded a training that we all attended on GPP, and that was for all the colleagues across the site, and PrEPVacc was excellent in facilitating this training, equipping us, our field workers and community educators, which resulted in us having an excellent, robust communication plan and community engagement plan, which we're now monitoring and evolving. And of course, in terms of recruitment and retention, none of this can happen without COVID. So we conduct these studies in the context of COVID, and we've learned many new strategies, and therefore HIV and other clinical trials will now take place in the context of COVID. And many of us around this table in this group have got extensive experience on these issues. But as advocates, we need to question these issues and say, are they being tied together? Are communities receiving the message in a similar way? What do communities understand when we say a speed for COVID vaccines? And so we have to do these studies in collaboration with advocates and with people around the table, the ethicists. Ethics in community engagement is key in terms of our access to products, safety and well-being of our participants, our partners, the family and community. We really need to advocate more for formative research, and researchers need to begin to learn from our communities so that the communities inform these protocol development. In PrEPVacc, there is a small social science study, and we're hoping to understand the communities better, but we need to be more proactive on these issues. We really need to begin to question the issues of access to new interventions upfront in protocols. They need to be in the protocols upfront so that when we're reviewing this, we understand it. Results dissemination and issues of standard of care are key. Often results, we're waiting for, there are delays and participants are not getting this information up very early. So I have a lot of people to thank, and that's on the slide, and various partners in the study. What I want to leave you with this inspiration is that science makes people reach selflessly for truth and objectivity. It teaches people to accept reality with wonder and admiration. And this is from Lisa. And my personal one is truth alone gives strength. Strength alone is the medicine for the world's disease, by Swami Vivekananda. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'd really like to hear from you what your thoughts and questions are. Thank you.
Well, Nitha, thank you so much for that. Nitha and Vincent, yeah, we really appreciate your sharing, and thanks for taking us through PrEPVacc. And Nitha, thanks a lot for speeding up so that we can move on to this second section of the agenda, which is an open discussion. And this is going to be facilitated by Angelo, and with a little bit of help from myself. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Daisy. And again, thanks for that, Nitha and Vincent. We will go right into the questions. We don't have a lot of time. And I have one in the chat already about, actually two of them in the chat about mental health. How is mental health being addressed or dealt with in the trial? And this is a question from Josephine in Nigeria. And Nitha, actually maybe Vincent, one of you, Sindra did ask a question about trans people, and Nitha, you did answer it, but I wanted to follow up on that and say, are trans people being included directly, or is it that when somebody shows up, they can be included in the trial? I think the answer wasn't very clear. Are they part of the individuals who are being considered to be recruited, or is it that when one shows up, you will not turn them away? Let's start with those two.
I'll go with this quickly, if that's okay. So the trans people, we're not in different sites. The approach is different as per the response in the chat. If they show up and if they meet the eligibility criteria, we will not prejudice them against the study. As you're aware, in some of our settings, engaging with trans is been a challenge. There's many legal, ethical issues. And so we are currently, as part of Reg Cohort, engaging them as partners and hoping that they become part of this study, but also future studies in our areas, because we know that they're a key population. So I hope that answers the question. With regard to mental health interventions, under standard of care, mental health has been a big issue, especially with COVID, both with employees and participants and our communities. For some settings, there are mental health counselors available at sites. but not all budgets provide for a social worker or a psychologist at the site level. It's something that we're looking at as institutes, but also specifically as sites. Many of our participants come with many issues and they are dealt with counselors. We have a robust referral plan that includes social, psychological, clinical. We just don't focus on clinical, and that's part of the requirements for some of our ethics committees. Thank you. I'll defer the others to Vincent.
Thanks, Neta. So I'll take on the question of how our plan for vaccine-induced seropositivity. So our plan is that all volunteers will be encouraged as much as possible not to seek HIV testing from any other center apart from the research sites, where we can do specific, like the gene experts, specific tests to avoid people getting false positivity when actually it is due to the immune response caused by the vaccines. And we've had experience with this in our past HIV vaccine clinical trials. So that's our plan. So the plan is to make sure that people are encouraged as much as possible not to seek HIV testing and counseling from any other source apart from the research sites.
Vincent, I just wanted to check, is there a plan for post, I suppose once participants have been unblinded, is there a plan for those that test VISP or that present with VISP? Is there a plan for them? And if so, what does it look like?
Nandi, so are you referring to the post-trial period?
Yes.
Okay, you know we have this period which is long enough, the long-term follow-up, and we think by the time we are done with the long-term follow-up period, either the seropositivity, the vaccine-induced seropositivity will have went away, or we could actually tell and then say, so it's going to be lifelong.
Great. Thanks for that, Vincent. And please, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question to Nitha and Vincent directly. I don't see any new questions yet in the chat, but if you do have one, please write it or unmute yourself. And as I wait for that, a quick one about, you did say that after week 26, participants will continue to access PrEP, but they will be referred elsewhere. But we know that many times when there is referrals included, people fall in the cracks. How are you going to ensure that when people are referred to receive PrEP away from the trial sites, they will actually continue to access PrEP as needed? And then the second one about the vaccine efficacy at 70%, can you say a little bit more? 70% would be great, but we also know that a different vaccine trial, actually the very first one to give us efficacy, the Thai trial was as low as 31%. So if PrEPVacc gives us efficacy of 65, 68%, would that be considered not good enough? And again, I know that these are different vaccines, but can you speak a little bit more about that to help us understand these numbers?
Hi, Angelo. So Vincent, I'll take the issue of referral. So one of the things, Angelo, in many of the sites, and it's becoming more of a requirement, is to have an engagement with the public health sector. So memorandum of understanding, memorandum of agreements upfront with the studies. So in our setting, we've had participants that have had challenges with the public health sector in access, not just oral PrEP, but contraception, testing. And we've had to report that and engage with the public health clinics. Remember, they're overburdened, understaffed, trying to do many, many things together. So this is an issue that we're addressing, and we assist participants, but that's a short-term plan. Medium and long-term plan is really to work with the health sector. Again, under-resourced, understaffed, not understanding all these things that are coming into the foreplay of HIV prevention options. So it's something that we continue to work on with our participants and with the public health sector. So I hope that helps.
It does. Vincent?
That has been a point of contention. Our community advisory board raised it. They were actually urging us to provide PrEP all throughout the trial. But we said we don't want to create an artificial situation when after the trial has ended, then people cannot link to the public health sector to make sure they continue accessing PrEP. So the second question, which is about the level of efficacy that we target to achieve with the PrEPVacc trial. I think we can't say we're going to achieve 70% or 40% or 90%, but we think anything that comes out will be scientifically explained, and the implications of such levels of efficacy will be evaluated accordingly. But we hope that we achieve a very good efficacy level, because that's the hope. The world really needs a safe and effective vaccine.
Great, thanks for that, Vincent. I know there are many more questions, but we're already 4 minutes past the hour, so I'm going to hand back to Daisy to take us to the next steps.
Okay, that's great. Thanks so much, Angelo, for facilitating. I think there's a lot of questions that we could tackle, but I want to just say another big thank you to Vincent, to Neetha, and to Nandi for the excellent presentations. And I'm going to hand off to Stacy to give us some closing thoughts. Stacy is the director of the for research engagement at PrEPVacc, as well as the lead for the CASPR project. Thank you.
Thanks, Daisy, and thank you. I think thanks to Daisy and Nandi and to the fellows team for pulling this call together. I think what has struck me just listening in for the past hour is that we probably don't do this enough. And so I'm really glad that you all kind of made it happen, and thank you to the fellows team for joining in and for kind of stretching stretching yourselves, your intentions to learn a little bit about vaccines. And I think this really exciting trial, PrEPVacc. I think that there's a lot we could say to kind of wrap up. I will say that I think that these questions that have come in at the end have been so important, and so maybe our teams back at PrEPVacc, or to hear from the fellows or the CASPR members that are on the line as well. We would love to hear what you would be interested in talking more about. I think these calls, we live in this world of Zoom, and I think I miss being able to kind of spend a couple of hours just sitting around a table hashing through some of this, because I know that it is a lot of information. I think vaccines can be hard to dive into. And again, just want to say thank you to all the presenters on the call for just kind of a great presentation of vast information in terms of the vaccine field and this specific trial. And I think really highlighting some of the key points to think about. So in terms of next steps, we'd love to hear from you. We'll debrief. I think that if people want more conversations about vaccines, about PrEPVacc, about the community engagement around the trial, about the vaccine field as a whole, we can definitely make that happen. One of the things that we are thinking a lot about in terms of CASPR is, what are the advocacy priorities around vaccine development? We all want a vaccine. But vaccine research is really hard, and so how do we kind of maintain momentum? And I think especially, how do we maintain advocates and community support for this research that really is a marathon? And I'm using sort of a lot of cliches that we've talked about for a long time, and I think people are probably, very familiar with. But that's something that I would love to hear as well about the fellows team. I love engaging with the fellows because I think we really learn from you all about kind of what the hot, what the big priorities are for you. And so maybe to kind of hear more about how this sort of vaccine piece fits into your thinking around the needs for HIV prevention would really be great. And Casper as well, but we all talk about that, I think, quite a bit. You know, and I know we're over time, but just so many things struck me in this conversation. I think PrEPVacc and what became evident to me in the conversation, and I think some of the questions that were coming out about, you know, mental health and how participants are being taken care of in these trials, inclusion of trans populations and other populations, to me, bring up this point that we all need to be thinking about as advocates about how are clinical trials sort of fitting into our real worlds. And I think PrEPVacc is one that sort of gets that really sort of I think gets into that the most in terms of being a clinical trial and kind of combining sort of this PrEP world with an experimental vaccine. And I think that's why we might learn a lot from it. And I think as advocates, we should be watching it closely and really continuing to engage with the trial team. So I would just say those are our kind of next action points. Let's continue to engage and continue, I think, to think about our priorities as advocates and identify those together. And I think bring those to the PrEPVacc team. And thank you again for the PrEPVacc team for being such great partners with us. I know community engagement has been a key component and with the PrEPVacc team, and Vincent and Nitha, I know you are just really kind of leading that charge and are playing really important roles in the trial. So thank you for that work. And we just always love the opportunity to work with you. So I will end there. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Stacey, for the closing remarks. And I think one of the big achievements of this call is that now we have opened up the lines of communications between the fellows, the Casper team, and the PrEPVacc team, which is great. I think, thanks a lot for hanging on. I wanted to request anyone who can put on their video to do that so that we can take some historical photos to remind us of this PrEPVacc call during COVID times. So I hope I can do this. Please, if you have, oh, you bet you have a mask. Yes, great. Let me just take this screen grab. Oops, sorry. Okay, great. One, okay, the next one is coming. Oops, sorry, I'm really bad at this. Yeah, Jackie, I can see you. Okay. Brilliant. One more screen. Sorry, I'm using an iPad, so I have like multiple screens. Okay. Oops, Santa. Okay. Oops. I'm so sorry. I am completely. I really apologize for making you guys. Okay, we are done and saved. Okay, thanks so much, guys. Have a great day and evening. We will send through the recording as well as the presentations. Thanks so much. Bye for now.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye, Josephine.